All right, folks, welcome to the Monsters, Madness, and Magic podcast. I'm your host, Justin, here with a quick word before we dive in. Now, in this episode, I chat with actor Brian Bremer about growing up in the Deep South, falling in love with the stage, Pumpkinhead, horror movies, convention life, and more. As always, thank you all for listening out there, and without further ado, here you go. Okay, Brian, take us back in time. You're a youngster. Are
Oh
you
boy.
are you a book reader,
Like
fort
yesterday.
builder, troublemaker, or all the above?
A book reader, a fort builder, a troublemaker. I wasn't really a troublemaker till my last year in high school. And thankfully I got a scholarship or I wouldn't have gone to college. Um, Fort builder,
Mm.
for sure. Yeah, my cousins and I all grew up in South Carolina and we used to get together at the holidays and we'd play Land of the Lost out in the
Oh,
woods, out in the back of our house. And the power pylons were always like the little time travel things that they went into.
oh,
And
that's
I was
cool.
always, I was the sleaze stack. And we had a really fun place back in back of our house. When you're a kid, you feel like the woods go on for a million miles and they're just endless. But it was actually probably like 50 yards to the next neighborhood. But we had this really cool creek that ran behind my house and these rock formations, and we called it Rock Island. And it was so cool. So we would actually go back there and build forts and play mud ball fighting across the ditch, mud ball war, whatever that was. I got hit in the head with a mud ball. I got hit pretty hard too, and somebody put a rock in it. It was some stupid kid put a rock in it and hit me right in the head with it. So
Oh,
yeah, maybe a troublemaker and a fort builder.
that's awesome. I have a similar story. I grew up around clay pits, so my friends and
Oh
I
yeah,
would
yeah,
hide on opposite side of the pit and throw clay at each other. And I got hit in the head with a clay
yeah,
ball
man. What
filled
the
with
fuck were we
rocks.
thinking? Kids are crazy, man. Oh my God. I swear a lot of times I think I'm really lucky to be alive. I
Yeah, some
really,
of the
really
things we
find
did.
it. Yeah. Some of the situations we found ourselves in. I don't know how I made it to my age, but I did, thank God.
So, what about your parents, Brian? Were either of them artistically inclined or involved in the business at all?
Interestingly, no, not really. My mother divorced my father when I was 5 or 4. He was in the military. He's still alive, and that's why we traveled around so much when I was a little tiny kid in North
Hmm.
Carolina. And then she remarried about 2 years later. When I was 6, she remarried, and that was my stepdad until I was 23, and then he died. And then she married again. And now I've had my current, I call him my dad, my dad and my two sisters that came with him. We've been family for 35 years. So that's really although I do have lots of siblings that are still alive from my biological father, and I'm very close to one sister. Boy, that's a long story. But none of them were artistic. Well, I take that back. My dad was in the military. My second dad was like a banker and opened his own collection agency business. And I worked for him briefly. Oh boy, that was quite a business. And then my dad now is retired, and he was a software developer, and he did really, really well with his partners right around the year 2000. So that's kind of creative. But my mother, and your curtains remind me of my mom because my mother was very artistic. She was not in the business at all. She worked in tandem with her husbands building their businesses. So she was instrumental in building their businesses with them. But she was always sewing, and
Hmm.
like she made the curtains that I have in my house here. She made pillows, she made bedspreads, she designed people's houses. So very artistic and creative. She passed away 5 years ago this past Thanksgiving, and we have a lot of her stuff. And when you look at the embroidery and the seam work and the piping on the pillows and the fabric she chose, I mean, she was really, really incredible. At one point in her life, she decided she wasn't going to do it anymore. She didn't want to have to deal with customers or anything like that. She just kind
Right.
of retired out at the beach. But she was extremely artistic my whole life. So that's probably where it came from. Now, my great grandfather on her side was a preacher in
Oh,
Young Harris, Georgia. Yeah. So preaching, acting,
yeah.
being a lawyer,
Very thin
all of that
line.
kind of public. Yeah. There's a lot of crossover. So it was in our genes somewhere, I think, but I'm the only actor in my family. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The only professional actor. I mean, there are a lot of actors in my family, but I'm the only one who makes a living
I
at
think we all have
it.
those.
In the business. Yeah, yeah. And people ask me all the time like how I've been in show business so long, and I still am very active. I do a lot of different things. I produce, I still act. I'm a voice actor. I work in talent and development, so I help develop feature films and get funding for movies and TV. And and I teach too. And my students will say, "How have you been in this business so long?" And I always say, I just never went home. If work wasn't coming in one area, I found another way to use my skills and to work in a different area. And so have this very eclectic kind of career and can always kind of find something to do in the business. But sometimes, my nephew came to a Pumpkinhead screening we did in Asheville a few weeks ago, and he's 8. And it was such a blast, man. I don't think anything's going to ever top that. It was a sold out screening. My nephew was there. He didn't know what to make of it. He took like the money at the table when I was signing autographs, and he would talk to people, and people loved him. He was like my little mascot. And the next day, his mom said, and he was born on my birthday too, so he's really of my heart. He probably is the next artist in our family. He's really a really good painter already. He's a really good
Wow.
visual artist. But the next day, his mom called me up. She goes, "Okay, Milo wants to be an actor now." And I said, "Oh no, 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 no. Please, no. Be a dentist. Anything but this business, man.
Right.
You
So, Brian,
know?
yeah, exactly. Was he aware that you were in the movie
Yeah,
before?
he's
Yeah.
known for a while.
Okay.
I guess he's probably known since he was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and he's always wanted to see it. And his mom wouldn't let him see it. But she felt like, okay, he's 8, he's old enough. And all these people I meet at the conventions, Justin, most of them saw Pumpkinhead when they were like 6 or 7 years old.
Right here.
Like a parent, no shit, man.
What's wrong with this?
Like, yeah, usually your parents showed it to you or you saw it with
Yeah.
a relative, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the story. I hear that a lot. So she said she thinks he's old enough. And it's not really, it's not super bloody. It's not like a gore fest, particularly. It's just scary, but it's a good movie. I mean, I got to see it in Asheville with an audience for the first time in probably 35 years. Because we watch it a lot, but it's always with a few friends or
Yeah.
we'll watch it at home. But it was fun seeing it with the audience. Was the whole point. Oh yeah, so he's wanted to see it for a long time, and she finally decided he was old enough to see it. Well, of course, halfway through he gets exhausted and has to leave. He like left right before all my big scenes, so he really didn't see. He saw a little bit of me, but I come in I'm in the beginning, and then I come in about halfway through, and I'm in for the rest
Yeah.
as we're from the monster and trying to figure out what's going on. So he laughed, right? But it was such a joy to have him there. And I told the organizer of that event, it was Orbit DVD in Asheville. Big shout out to all the video stores, but especially Orbit DVD. They're such supporters of our industry, and they sponsor conventions, and
Yeah.
they're going to sponsor Con next year again. But I told the organizer of that event, Mark, I said, I love the shows that I do where I get to meet my fans. I said it's going to be really hard to top this, because having him there was just, I mean, my heart was so full, and I was proud, and he was very proud. And there's a picture of the two of us there, and he's just beaming ear to ear. It was really rewarding and gratifying. So anyway.
Well, they're gonna blame you later when he's
They're going to blame you later. Oh Lord, I can't imagine. I mean, I'll help him any way I can, obviously, but it's a tough business. I don't know. Like if I had kids, I understand why people in show business don't want their kids to be in show business.
Right.
It's just tough business.
Yeah.
You have to develop a really thick skin, and at every turn, the triggers that trigger your insecurities are there because you're always on stage and people are always kind of judging you by your work, and you have to, I think, identify those triggers that make you insecure and teach yourself to respond to them differently, because we all have insecurities. It's part of being human. They don't go away, and if you let them rule you, they'll get in the way of everything you do. And you just have to learn to think about them in a different way. But it's a lot. Of course, there's some people that go through a whole career in the entertainment industry and they seem to never have an issue with that. But I don't know very many actors that don't deep down have those insecurities. I think sometimes the reason that we act, to become other people and to get lost in other characters and other story and to tell stories. That's an initial reason I think that we start.
Yeah.
And then as you mature, obviously you learn to do it for the right reason, which is the audience that's watching, your storytelling to them, and for the craft itself, and the fun of the craft. I really found that with voiceover. amazingly, and I was 33 when I started my voiceover career, and I've done that now for 20 years
Wow.
steadily. Because I found you have a great voice too, by the way. I don't know if anybody's
Thank
told
you.
you that, but
Yeah, I do hear it from time to time. It's a little John Wayne.
you have a great resonant John Wayne kind of voice. That's right. But when I found voiceover, I just kind of never looked back. I loved so many things about it, and really, even today, I mean, I'm a hustling actor. I audition every single day, sometimes 18, 19, 20 times a day. And I'll book, if I book 2 or 3 a month, that's a good month,
Yeah.
so it's the ratio of your bookings to your auditions. You're basically a professional auditioner, you
Yeah.
know. But the thing that keeps me doing it is just I just love it. I actually love doing it. And I've had success in it too, and that helps. That helps too. And for a lot of actors, it takes a long time before you figure out how to kind of sew your income together from what you're doing. And you have to branch out and do lots of different things. Um, but with voice acting, I fell in love with the craft of what that is. And that has now translated into my on camera work because I never really liked on camera. I love the theater. I started in the theater.
Yeah.
That's where we all get our start. Um, I had success in on camera acting when I was in LA. It didn't feel like it at the time because I was so young and just literally hustling from one job to the next. Um, but I never enjoyed the process, not of doing the work. I enjoyed doing the work, but I never enjoyed the process of auditioning for on camera.
Yeah. I hear that
Oh
a
my
lot.
God.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody. I had an actor friend tell me once nobody likes to audition. I mean, how can you? You're always having to prove yourself. But then I saw this quote from Bryan Cranston who said, when he goes into a room to audition, he doesn't worry about trying to be anything that he thinks they may want him to be, or try to be what he thinks their idea of the character is. He said, this is a quote, that he goes into the room and sort of presents it as if, okay, this is what I will do with the role. This is what I will bring to the role. I've done my work. I'm coming in. If you hire me, this is what you get. And this interpretation, and then you have to be flexible and take direction. That was kind of a game changing thing for me to hear. It's like, okay, you could, if you're true to yourself, which is all you really can be,
Yeah.
if you do the work and you prepare, which I didn't know as a young actor, and you'll still be nervous in the audition, but it won't rule you because
Right.
you prepare
Right.
and
Yeah.
you're going to deliver your choices. So, all things are, but an actor friend of mine told me once, he's like, nobody likes to audition, man. We were actually at an audition when he told me this. And I just turned to him and said, oh my God, I get so nervous at these things, man. You don't know the casting director yet. They don't know you. You have to go in and show them something that stands out. I said, oh, I just can't stand it. And he goes, Brian, nobody likes this part of it. Like, well, okay, David, that's okay. That makes sense. Yeah. But you do learn to kind of, you have to actually kind of learn to at least enjoy the process. And I do now. We had a really rare in-person voiceover audition just recently with a casting director in New York who wanted to audition you in person over Zoom, like we're doing.
Right.
And I loved it, God, because in voiceover, you're always working in isolation. You do the audition, you send it out. You don't get any direction or feedback or anything like that. And if you book the job, yay. It's cool because usually it's just that first audition and they'll book you off of your read. There aren't callbacks. Typically, there are sometimes. But this casting director in New York, big casting director, wanted to audition us all in person, like pre-COVID days, like in the old days.
Right.
And so you had to make an appointment, and so I'm prepared, I'm ready, I've done my work, and I know what I'm doing now too. That's a big thing. I mean, at my age, I know that I know how to do. I know that I know what I'm doing, which helps. But we get on the Zoom, and she's like, "Oh, I hope this is okay." I'm like, "Okay." Also, it doesn't hurt that everybody in the business is younger than me now because that's kind of a thing too. But she gets in this casting director. She's like, I hope this is okay. I know this is a lot, this is the way we used to do it. It's a lot harder because you have to make an appointment. I know it takes up your time, and I'm sorry. I'm like, no, this is awesome. You're in the room with me. You're giving me direction. We're having this creative interaction and communication. Like we're building this audition together. I said, I will do this anytime, anytime. And I kind of feel the same way now about on-camera stuff because I've gotten to meet the fans.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough. I've actually gotten to meet the audience that loves the work. And really, now I did a couple of movies this year and I have them very much in my mind. Like it's almost like being on stage because I know that there are people watching and my job is to tell a story, to find this character and tell this story in a way that they enjoy and hopefully just like have fun with. So now that process of auditioning on camera is becoming easier for me because of my voiceover work and just because I don't know, I'm rambling, Justin, but because I do see it as a process.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, there are people in this business that want to make you feel less than, and that is just a reality of our business and probably every business in the world. And you have to understand when people make you feel bad or make you feel less than, or they're acting superior to you, or they're kind of putting you down, that is always 100% their problem.
yeah. Well
It's
said.
something that's going on with them. It's some insecurity or badness that's in their heart. It's got nothing to do with you. But that's the hard thing, especially in our business where it is so personal.
Yeah,
It's literally not something you've made, but it's you
yeah,
that's on the line being judged to be good enough or not good enough. And so it's very hard in our business when people do behave that way to not take it personally.
yeah.
And
I
that's what
can
I tell
see.
young actors that I teach. Yeah, you got to get that thick skin. You have to have a very strong sense of who you are. And I think even more importantly, because who you are evolves and changes as you grow. But more importantly, why are you doing this?
Right,
Why do you want to be
right.
a creative person? Why are you expressing your art? Why? And those reasons have to be, not to be Pollyanna about it, but those reasons have to be pure. You
Yeah,
have to do it for the love of the craft. You have to do it for your audience. You have to do it because you want to learn and grow. And then you get that exhilarated rush that it gives you when you have that fulfilling moment creatively. If those aren't on the table, you might be doing it for the wrong reasons, and you maybe should be a dentist.
you need a dentist.
You do every other month these days, it seems.
You mentioned the stage,
Yeah.
Brian. Take us back to your very first time on stage. Do you recall if it was
Oh
went off
God.
smoothly, or did your pants fall
Yeah.
down or anything?
No, no pants didn't fall down in that show. I did have a guy ask me if I'd do a movie once and take my pants off and jump in a pool, and I said no to that one. That was actually Buck Flower on the set of Pumpkinhead. I'm doing this movie. You might have to bury your butt and jump in the pool. But anyway, no, my first time on stage was great. I was the first time I remember being on stage was in high school, and we did this series of short plays by Jerome McDonald called Glimpses. And a lot of high school drama departments used Jerome McDonald's stuff to compete because they were short little vignettes about teen suicide. Your little brothers died in a car crash, and you'd cry, 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 and it's all this teen angst and emotion, and it dealt with like serious subjects,
Yeah,
alcoholism, depression. But you would take those out to festivals and things and then you would win an award if you cried on stage or something, I think. But I remember we did Glimpses at Rock Hill High School auditorium, and I remember the distinct feeling of being really really nervous, but being in control on the stage. Like I knew I had the audience's attention. I knew they were with me. I felt like I was speaking to each of them. But more importantly for me, like the camaraderie of the castmates and the director and everybody involved with the play, I felt for the first time like I found my tribe kind of. And that's why I started acting, because I felt like I was good at something finally, because I was never good at sports, and I was good at like debate club and like the student political things or whatever, the mock trials and all that stuff. But I really found like like-minded people and kind of kindred souls in the drama department in high school. And of course, we were all going through all our angsty stuff
yeah.
together back then. Very dramatic. But that was the first time on stage, Glimpses, I remember. And that monologue, I used that monologue to get my scholarship to Pepperdine. I used that very same monologue that I did in that show to get my first agent in LA.
Wow, it served you well.
I did it in their office for them. Yeah, man. I took it all through to till I started working professionally. But
So
yeah.
this is something I like to ask everyone, Brian, because you just never know someone's background. What scared you as a kid?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Clowns.
Uh, that's a good one.
Specifically Bozo the Clown. Do you remember Bozo
Yeah.
the Clown?
Yep.
He had like the hair that was like this, right? Right. And I remember this very clearly. And I must have been 5 years old because it was for the brief period of time that my mother and I lived by ourselves. So between her two husbands, we lived in an apartment in Columbia, South Carolina, in a townhouse or two-story apartment. It was tiny, tiny. And my bedroom was upstairs. And I remember having a nightmare very, very clearly where the lights are all off in my room and there's a door to the hallway and it's lit. and Bozo the Clown steps into the hall to the doorway, completely in silhouette, and just turns his head like this. And
Terrifying.
I remember that to this day. Terrified, terrified. So I never liked clowns.
Yeah.
Clowns really scared me as a kid. Other than that, I don't remember being too really scared. I mean, I was very loved, and I had a wonderful great aunt and wonderful grandma, and a mom who really loved me and did everything for me. My mom and I had we clashed because we're very much alike. We're very much alike. But when you look back on life with a parent like my mom, you realize everything she did was for me.
Right.
Everything. I didn't have anywhere to go to college in my last year of high school. I kind of had a really rough last year of high school because I had a unrequited love, and I was just like so angsty, dude. I had like the black hair, I had purple hair, and wore black clothes, and I was just like, ugh. And started doing really bad. I was a straight A student until like my senior year of high school, and then I was making F's, and I was
Mm-hmm.
really, really like getting into some trouble. And she took me to the Southeastern Theater Conference in May of my senior year in Tampa, and I auditioned and got 13 offers for college out of that audition. And it was her idea to do it. Her and my drama teacher, they really saved my life.
Yeah.
And I got a full ride to Pepperdine. But I mean, she drove me down there. She drove me to college. She would put me on tape and put me on camera for different program auditions. She took me to the North Carolina School for the Arts, like drove me there for their summer program auditions. I mean, I look back now and realize, how much she did for me. And I think, I would hope everyone understands, no matter what their relationship is with their parents, that all parents are trying to do their best. And when
Mm.
you look back at the things they did, even if they made wrong choices, they were, well,
Trying to do the right thing, hopefully.
yeah, trying to. I mean, there are extreme cases of
Yeah.
sick people that should have kids, but I was lucky that wasn't my situation. So I was very loved, very cared for. I don't remember being afraid of really anything except clowns.
All in
Specifically
all, that's not
Bozo
so
the Clown.
bad.
Yeah, and specifically Bozo the Clown. Like I could not watch that freaking Bozo show after that nightmare. I just couldn't. I couldn't watch it. I'm sure he was a super nice guy too.
So, just to go back to acting for a second, Brian,
Mhm.
another question I like to ask all actors I speak with, to us non-actors, I feel like the term method acting has become a bit muddled.
Oh
So,
yeah, 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 yeah.
what is your method?
Well, it's different with every role,
Mm.
Justin. It's funny. I've studied a lot of different techniques, and there's lots of ways to be in the moment and live in the moment. Film is very, very different from theater. Theater is a very specific rehearsal process because you're going to repeat a show many, many times. You're going to repeat those moments many, many times over many, many nights, sometimes weeks, months, sometimes years. Um, Film is a very organic medium. In fact, I always, when I'm on a set, I'll ask the director to shoot the rehearsal because you just don't know what's going to happen in the rehearsal. When I
Yeah.
worked with Mickey, his process, he had a photographic memory and he never learned his lines. He would literally look at the sides right before the scene and go, okay, we're ready, let's go. Because he believed, and he did 177 movies. So, the kid knew what he was doing, right? Mickey Rooney is who I'm talking about, in case. And it's so funny. I go to these shows and I have a picture of me and Mickey Rooney in Silent Night, Deadly Night 5. And so many people don't know who he is. I'm like, okay, we're going to have a discussion here. If you don't know Betty Davis, Mickey Rooney, or Joan Crawford, we need to have a discussion. Or Judy Garland.
Or the
But
Garden State
anyway.
Live commercials. Some people know that's how some people know Mickey Rooney.
Oh, that's good, man. I forgot all about those. But film was a spontaneous medium, and you were going to capture things in that very first take that you might not ever capture again. So that was kind of his process, like let things happen organically. And he didn't like to have a lot of rehearsal.
Oh.
I've worked with I've worked recently with actors, I won't name names, but who stay in character like the entire time, like even when the cameras aren't rolling, because that's their method, and they need to stay in that space. And then you hear about an actor like Glenn Close, who I've never worked with, who can do Hillbilly Elegy and have these like terrifying, emotional, drug-addled scenes, and then pop out when the camera's cut and be like, "Okay, when's lunch?" And like she completely turns it off. And I've done roles where that's how it is for me. I can kind of turn it on when the camera rolls, and just stop and be me. If the character's different for me. And then I've had roles where I've really just dived in
Mm.
and stayed in character the whole time. Silent Night 5 was kind of like that, but that was more because I just really enjoyed playing that character.
Yeah.
And it was so different from me. It's a killer, but he's motivated by want and need. And that was a situation where I would journal in character on set in
Uh,
between takes. I would write in his voice. And also he moved a specific way and he spoke in a specific way. Whereas Bunt in Pumpkinhead, I mean, that I just like related to that kid. Like that was me as a kid, curious, mischievous, starting building forts
growing up in the
out in the
South.
woods. Right?
Yeah.
So with that, I didn't so much stay in character like between takes because he was so much like me anyway.
Yeah.
But with a character like Pino, that's kind of a fantasy character, I did what you would call more of the method approach, which is
Gotcha.
where you live the character, you take it home with you.
Right.
That's rare for me. And I think, again, that probably is because I have a voice acting background. And with voice acting, you literally turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah.
You literally, and in voice acting, it's not cheating, but you have to learn to access your emotions very quickly. Because if you're in my voiceover session, you're doing a Burger King commercial for me, right, Justin? And I have you for an hour and you do it just like you did in the audition. It's happy and friendly, like you're talking to a best friend. That's great. But then I might say, well, give me a heartfelt read, give me an emotional read, give me an elevated read, give me an authoritative read. Now give me a friendly, authoritative read. And because time is money and I have you for an hour for that session, you have to be able to turn that on and off on a dime. So there are ways that we get there in voice acting, but that may be why. And for me also, I just enjoy the process of acting now, just in all ways. I haven't done a
Mhm.
play in a long time. I had a theater company here for about 15 years, and I'm dying to get back on stage, and probably will at some point. Theater doesn't pay extremely well, so you have to kind of pick and choose when you do
Yeah.
it. I mean, for me, but like I said, I'm a working actor. I'm not a star on Broadway. But that is my first love. I love everything about the theater. That's where I got started. I love the craft of the theater and having the live audience there to get the feedback from, the interaction from. Like that's a real rush. I tend to kind of turn it on and off. Now I say that, but there's one script we're looking at right now. I can't talk a whole lot about it, but it's a very intense, emotional character. There's lots of tears. There's lots of trauma in this person's life that motivate him to do the things that he does. That if that movie goes, that'll be interesting to see what my approach is to that character because it's going to require me to access a lot of very, very hefty, serious emotions constantly. Like the first half of the film is just tears and like really deep, like hard emotion. So in that kind of situation, that might be something where I have to immerse myself in a particular mindset. Like I might not be super friendly between takes if I'm having
Right.
to concentrate on delivering that again and again. But we'll see. Fingers crossed, man. Fingers
I'm
crossed it
hoping it
goes.
happens for you, man. I'm excited
I know.
about
I
it.
hope they see. Thank
How
you, man. Yeah.
so how did the transition from stage to screen happen for you?
Well, I got my scholarship in theater, and it was a theater scholarship to Pepperdine, theater and playwriting. So to pay back the scholarship, you had to participate in all the productions at school. We basically lived in the theater, never saw the light of day. We're in there building sets. If you weren't on stage, you had to learn how to build sets. If you weren't building sets, you had to learn to do the lights. You had to pay your scholarship back in hours. Um, and so my first year at Pepperdine was really just doing shows. And I ended up in the main stage musical, which was like the big show that we did every fall. It was Camelot, and I played Mordred. And there was the receptionist who worked at a big talent agency in the audience one night. And she came backstage. This is why you got to be nice to everybody who works in an organization, no matter what you perceive their level to be. This receptionist, she's like, "You're really good. I want you to come audition for my bosses." I'm like, "Oh, sure, okay." And it was the Gage Group, which was a huge agency back then, still around. I think it's called something different now. Marty Gage is not alive anymore, but he was a very sweet man. And I went and auditioned and just kind of started auditioning and then slowly booking roles. I booked a commercial first, then a TV show, then I booked Pumpkinhead and started booking some other features. And it was a weird transition for me because I'd never done it before and I'd never studied film acting. Now I know the difference between stage acting and film acting is simply how far away your audience is. Like if
Yeah.
you've got me in close up right here, then the audience is right here. Like the person you're talking to, that's how close they are to your face, right? So what I didn't understand in the beginning was just the technique of the
Mm,
camera
right.
and adjusting those levels. So people had to bring me down because I'd be projecting like to the back row when the camera was right here, things like that. So, but one of my best acting teachers said, acting is acting. It's the truth of any given moment. Now, and then you adjust for the technique. If the audience is 100 feet away or 2 inches away, that changes the way you perform. You
Right.
internalize more on camera. The camera reads thoughts, right? Whereas the old lady on the fifth row can't read your thoughts. So you got to project, and your movements might be a little bigger so that she gets that same feeling as the person on the front row. But it's really all just technique beyond that. So you kind of learn that. And then acting for the microphone,
Mm,
very
mm,
different from camera, acting for the microphone is a little more theatrical, believe it or not. It's not as subtle. It's a little broader sometimes, especially in the commercial world. You're dealing with very broad emotions of joy, happiness, problem solutions. Um, anyway, I hope that answers your question.
yeah,
But that's how it
yeah.
happened. I
Right.
literally just started auditioning, and through the grace of God, I booked. Now, at the time, I didn't feel like I was working very much at all because there would be long stretches between jobs. Now I know that's how it is for an actor. You might do a job, and oh my gosh, you make $30,000 on this job. Wow, wow, and you might not work for the rest of the year.
Right.
That would be it, right? Or you might make
You
a
got to
thousand
stretch it
dollars
out.
on a
Yeah.
job, and because you're always going for that next job.
Right.
And at the time, it felt like, when I look back on it now, it doesn't feel like it. But at the time, it felt like, oh my God, I got to get that next job. I got to get that next job. And that's not a good mindset for an actor to have. You have to just hustle and do the work. And if you got to go work at Shoney's in between gigs, and go work at the buffet, man, there's no shame, right? Got to
Right.
keep the money coming in. But actually, like, the movies weren't that far apart. They would just be a few months apart. So I kind of got on a streak there, and I did all of those horror movies that people come to talk about now. Within a period of about 2 or 3 years, I think I did
That's
all
pretty
of those.
consistent.
It was, yeah, 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 yeah. And I mean, I was making a living.
Yeah.
I wasn't rich by any means, but I could pay my bills, yeah, and yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, Pumpkinhead specifically, do you remember that being a typical audition, just or a right
Oh
place, right
yeah.
time situation?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Mm.
without a doubt. It was one of the first auditions that the Gage Group set me on. I remember being in my agent's office at the time, right before the audition. He goes, "Well, it's a horror movie, kid. Everybody's got to do one. Yeah, you got to pay your dues." I'm like, okay, whatever. But I treated it like, Lance Henriksen said once, and actually told me this on the set of Pumpkinhead. He said, whatever you do in your career, whatever opportunities you're given, honor the work. Don't pass judgment on the work. Honor it. Find what's good about the script. Find what's good about the people, what's good about the project, and what's good about your character, and honor the work. So yeah, that was just like a regular audition, like in Van Nuys, I think, in a mini mall. The first audition with the casting director was set up in a mini mall somewhere, and then the second audition was on the second floor of an office building in Reseda, and that's where I met Stan Winston and the producers. And almost all the cast was there because that was a callback. So everybody who ended up getting cast, they were auditioning all the kids. So Jeffy, Cynthia Bain, um, Carrie Ramson, I remember she was there. I think everybody was there that ended up being cast. So it was like a final callback. And I got to watch while he auditioned them, and he auditioned all them with the scene where Billy gets run over and they find the
Mm.
body, and they're all like freaking out and crying, and they were all improvising. It was really funny. I mean, it was good, but it was fun to watch. But just then my audition scene was the church scene where I take them to the old burnout church, and I actually tell them like what's going on, and then Pumpkinhead shows up. So, but yeah, I just auditioned, and then I left, and I felt good about it, but I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking I was going to get it. And then I got a call 2 days later. So that's two auditions, and I got it. And I do remember one quick funny story. I was very young, and I knew who Stan Winston was, but I didn't know like who he was.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I was going to ask you if you knew like who you were dealing with.
I didn't. I mean, I didn't. Well, like with Toby Hooper, I knew who he was, but I didn't know who he was. Like
Yeah.
I was a big horror fan growing up, so I knew Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I got to work with some really amazing, amazing people in the business, and still do. And I'm really lucky in that way. But the night after my Pumpkinhead, once when I got the job, the agent called and I got the job. That was the day of the Oscars. And I remember I was in my apartment with like 7 other guys in Canoga Park, who were living in the apartment. And we're watching the Oscars, and Stan walks across to get his Oscar for Aliens. I'm like, holy shit. And so I call my mom back in South Carolina, and I'm like, Mom, are you watching the Oscars? Yeah, we're watching. I said, you see that guy that just got the special effects award? Yeah, I guess so. I'm like, Mom, that's the guy I'm about to start working with. That's Stan Winston. He's going to direct me in this movie. She's like, that's
Awesome, man.
nice. Yeah, she didn't care. She was proud though. She was really proud. But yeah, that was kind of cool because I remember very clearly seeing him walk across the stage and get his Oscar and going, "Oh, shit! I'm glad. I'm kind of glad I didn't know that. Before I
Yeah,
auditioned.
yeah,
You know?
I could see how that would be
Yeah,
beneficial. That was his first that was his directorial debut, wasn't it?
it was. Yeah, and I think because he won the Oscar, they had given him, or because of his work in Aliens or something, they gave him Pumpkinhead to do. He picked the script and he picked it. I know he picked it because he wanted to design the monster, and but he really liked the script. He worked a lot on that script with the writers, and he let us improvise a lot on set because he wanted those characters to be fully fleshed out and not just your typical teen body count, teen kill
Yeah,
count, a
yeah.
horror movie. But nothing wrong with that. But that's not what he wanted to make. That's one reason I don't think that. That's one reason I think that it wasn't as successful at the time as it has become. Because at the time when it came out, it wasn't a slasher movie, right? It
That's what
wasn't
people
Freddy
wanted.
or
Yeah.
Jason. Right. And that's what people were going for. That's what I was going for was Friday the 13th. Like I remember seeing the first Friday the 13th in the theaters. I mean, um, and I love those movies, but Pumpkinhead's different. And
It
even
is.
watching it at the screening a couple of months ago, it really holds up as a different kind of movie,
It's
you
more
know?
atmospheric than those movies, I'd say.
Very. Yeah, it really is. It's good. It's good. I love watching it with an audience all these years later and hearing them react exactly the same way that the audience did in the theater 35 years ago, like in all the same places.
So Brian, like I'm sorry I forgot his name, but you just said the talent agent that passed you along and said, you have to work. Everybody has to do a horror movie.
Yeah.
Is there still that stigma in horror? You think?
Oh, no way, man. Everybody wants to be in horror now. Thank you,
Okay.
Damien and David Howard Thornton. Thank you, Terrifier, too. I work in film and TV development too. So I work with a lot of the streamers in the studios and I have young writers that I work with. Everybody wants the next horror script now.
That's
And
good.
that's all
Good
they
to
want.
hear.
We had a producer come in the office the other day. It's like, I want a horror. It's got to be a churn and burn horror. It's got to have a high body count. And we're not thinking Nope. We're not thinking high concept. We're not thinking Nope or Get Out. We're thinking like Terrifier. And I'm like, yes, you are. Everyone is thinking Terrifier. And at Scarefest last year, actually, I got to meet David and Damien. There's a documentary crew there, and they wanted to interview them. So I asked them if they'd be interviewed, and they both did it. They're lovely, lovely, lovely people. They were really generous with their time, and they're in the documentary, which is great. But I didn't say this to him, but Damien is responsible really for this resurgence in what we would call classic horror. You
Yeah.
know, the body count, the killer, the iconic kind of character.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So no, there's no. Not only does everybody want to make the next Terrifier, but actors all want to be in that. So not at all. Things have changed so much. But when I started, there was a stigma between being a film actor and a TV actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were one or the other, right?
Yeah.
If you were a TV actor, you couldn't be a film actor. Like there, and film actors were like the glorious movie stars. Like that was your goal. That's what you wanted to do. Now, man, with streaming and everything, like there's just not that anymore. And I
And
think really there's a maturation that happens with you as an artist where you realize the venue is the venue.
yeah.
Whatever the medium is that's getting your message out there or getting your work out there, that's all that really matters. But I remember being snobbed. Like when I did my first TV show, I remember being like snubbed by some of the kids in school who had done movies.
Wow. Yeah,
Then I did a
I've
movie,
heard
but
yeah.
but it was a horror movie. Like it wasn't like a legitimate movie. Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
so I want to ask you, what do you think, the first time that society script comes across your desk, like when you read
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
it?
Well, again, I just went and auditioned. That was right after. That was. That was right after Pumpkinhead. Because I remember auditioning for that, and I remember when I got the job, I was in the studio, and Brian Yuzna came up to me like 2 weeks into shooting, and he goes, "Oh, you're the kid from Pumpkinhead, huh?" Like he didn't know. A lot of people think I got hired for subsequent movies because I had done previous movies, and that it just wasn't the case. I was auditioning, just out auditioning for everything. So we never got a full script. We would only get our scenes. Like I would get Petrie scenes, and I that's what we auditioned with, and I booked it. Then you get the script. And it's funny because a lot of people ask me, like, what did you think when you read that last scene in that movie? And honestly, I remember that last scene. I might have the script here somewhere actually. But in the script, it just said, uh, the rich orgiastically feast on the poor. That's all it said. It was one page, one description on the last page of the script. That was it. I remember that so clearly.
What could
So
that
we didn't
mean?
know. Well, right. And like in the context of this, like we read the script and we knew kind of what was going on and that we knew what they were, what the rich were, what they are in the movie. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. It's funny because I find a lot of people are seeing that movie now. I
Mm,
probably get as many people come up to talk to me about that movie at the conventions as not quite as many as Pumpkinhead, but it's getting close. So that has somehow Joe Bob showed it on Shutter, so that helped a lot.
yeah.
But but yeah, that's all it was. So we had no idea. So when we walked into the studio that last week to shoot the shunting, right? And we saw Screaming Mad George's prosthetics and all the stuff all over the sound stage and the goop and the slime that they put all over us. We're like, okay. And I remember some of us talking to each other going, I don't know what this is, man. I don't know. I have no idea what this is. We're gonna have to just see what happens. Now, of course, I'm really familiar with Lovecraft. I'm familiar with like Brian. Brian is a good friend still, and I'm very familiar with his aesthetic and like what he's going for in his horror. And I'm actually really hopeful that we'll get to do something soon. I'm very hopeful. I got to talk with him in depth a couple of weeks ago, and I just respect that man, Brian Yuzna. I
Yeah,
respect
yeah.
him so. Just
I've
like
had Brian on
he
before.
Oh God, I love him. He's just such a real decent human being. And he is vocal about when he likes you, he gives you compliments, he's encouraging. He'll say, "Yes, you're a good actor, wow, you really did a great job in the scene." And he's a really good director and has a really specific vision. And I remember him saying at one point, because he's the reason I was in Silent Night 5, because he executive produced that. And he's absolutely the reason I'm in that movie. And I remember him telling somebody at some point, "Oh, we like to try to hire Brian for anything we can." And as a young actor in a very insecure world in Los Angeles back then, and being so young, hearing something like that was so encouraging. And I've
Yeah.
never forgotten. I've never forgotten it.
Just some
Somebody pays
kind
you.
words can go a long way.
Yeah, kind words.
Yeah.
Kind words go a long way. Everybody needs to be kind
Yes.
and give people encouragement, right? There's no harm in that. It helps people to grow in positive ways and to be better people.
So, Brian, out of all the projects you've worked on, which would you say is the most challenging? Which did you lose sleep over one more than the others?
No, that's a really good question, Justin. I've I've done projects before where I have lost sleep because in retrospect, I'll think back on the shoot day and go, "Oh God, did I really do my best? Like, did I do well?" Because you never know till you see the thing. I'm
Yeah.
at the age now where finally I've learned to trust it. I did a TV series called Rectify for the Sundance Channel for a director writer named Ray McKinnon, and I remember feeling really good about that shoot on the day of and then just questioning it like, oh, I wish I'd done this. Oh gosh, if we had more time. Oh, I would. He gave me this direction. What did that mean? And did I do that? Like just like going around in my I don't do that anymore, or I try not to, but I did that for a long time as an actor. I did it with Pumpkinhead too. But then of course I see the project and I'm like, okay, you're fine, you did fine. You did good. You know what I mean? But I did it with Pumpkinhead too, and it actually worked to my benefit at that point. The very first scene in Pumpkinhead is where I pull up in the truck with my brothers and sisters, and we kind of confront uh, Cynthia Baines' character. She's taking pictures of us while we're taunting my little brother with the poem and everything. And she says, "Stop it! You're scaring him," whatever. She was better than that. She's a very good actor. Well, we shot that scene, and the scene just kind of ended. She goes, "Stop it! You're scaring him." And I just say, "Okay, get in the truck. Come on." We get in the truck and go. And I remember going home that night to that apartment in Canoga Park. And I remember not feeling good about it. That was my first feature film.
Yeah.
And I was really like, I felt like, oh, did I do a good job? I didn't feel like I'd done a good job. Now I had. This was part of being overly self critical, which is something actors really have to get over. All of us have to get over. We're
Yeah.
all our own worst critics, right? But I went home that night and I lost sleep over it. It's funny you asked that question. I was up all night thinking about, oh my God, it was, oh, did I do good? Was I awful? What did I say the line right? And I had this idea to fix it, to fix the way I felt about the performance. And the next day, we're on the same set, exactly the same set, and everything's pretty much set up exactly the same because they're now going to go and shoot the motorcycle accident. They're preparing to shoot the motorcycle accident. And I must have had balls the size of a camel back then because I don't know if I would do this today. But I walked up to Stan Winston and I'm like, hey man, I know we shot this scene yesterday, but I had an idea. What if, she goes, stop it. And instead of just putting the kids in the truck, I like go up to her and I kind of threaten her with a gesture. And he goes, I love it. Let's shoot it. And they
Wow.
set the scene up and they shot the whole scene again. So my insecurity gave me a second chance to shoot the scene and actually added in that little jump scare that I do to her in the beginning, which set the tone for the entire character
Yeah.
for the rest of the movie. That's the kind of stuff he would let us do that lifted it off the page, that became more than just a stereotypical country bumpkin kid,
Yeah.
right? He became, there was something going on with him. And Stan recognized that. He let me be creative. He let me have that moment, and that set the tone for the entire character for the rest of the movie. It got me. I found the character in that moment. That's a good director.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
director that will do that. But strangely, it all came from my insecurity about feeling like I'd fucked the scene up the day before and I just wanted to shoot it again. I would never, now that I know from a producer point of view, like how expensive it is to reshoot a scene. But
Never
but
would
we were
dream
in
of it.
so it took all of like a half hour to do it. But
So it'd be remiss of me not to ask about Pumpkinhead himself, Mr. Tom Woodruff Jr. And
yeah.
what do you remember him like having difficulty moving around in the suit at all, or was it pretty
No,
seamless?
he was so good in that suit. I mean, for most of for any of the full body shots, he's actually suspended by a crane, a cable in a harness,
Oh,
and he's manipulating it like a puppeteer.
okay.
His feet actually stop at the knees of the monster, right? So in all those full shots, head to toe of Pumpkinhead, he's lifted up in a crane and he's manipulating it. And he was so good. He's such a good suit actor. I mean, he was amazing. I mean, he did a lot. His resume is just like ridiculous. But in the scenes where you only saw Pumpkinhead like from the waist up, then and I've got this picture somewhere, I gotta pull it out. The bottom half from the knee down, from the knee to the feet of Pumpkinhead came off. And Tom's feet in tennis shoes are sticking out of the knees, right? And he's walking on a platform that's raised up about 4 feet off the ground so that he looks like he's this giant. But he's basically walking around in Nikes with just the top part of the costume on. And I've got a picture of that somewhere because I thought that was so cool, him on the ramp.
Yeah.
Joe, not difficult at all, and he loved it. He is such a nice, jovial, friendly guy. There's one scene in the movie where Pumpkinhead literally pulls me out of the closet, where I'm hiding in a closet, and Pumpkinhead like pretends he doesn't see me, but then he finds me in the closet. And we shot that. We shot that at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're all high on Jolt Cola. I don't know if you know what that is,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
this thing that I think they've outlawed now. There was nothing but pure caffeine. And it's like 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, something like that. And we shot that on the Newhall Ranch where they shot Little House on the Prairie. So all of those are the cabins from Little House on the Prairie. I think we were in Mr. Olson's cabin or something.
Mind blown. You just blew my mind with that.
Yeah,
I can
Newhall
see
Ranch.
it now.
Yeah. Oh, the barn. The barn
Yeah.
is Merle Oberon's barn, the guy who adopted Albert, Mr. FTD. That's his barn. And that was his cabin, his barn.
Shit.
But like the schoolhouse was there, the church was there, the Olson store was there. Like we were on the set of Little House on the Prairie. But those cabins are all built with removable walls so that you can put the camera anywhere and shoot into the scene. So in
Gotcha.
the closet, the back of the closet came off. So the camera is actually outside, the wall is off, shooting this way, and Pumpkinhead is here. And you might remember the scene where he like comes down the closet and he like, oh. Well, there's no sound. It's just sound effects and the music and everything. And it looks like I'm screaming. and I'm actually laughing my ass off. And if you know that when because we got the giggles, the crew got the giggles, everybody got the giggles. Tom has the giggles. If you watch closely enough, you will actually see Pumpkinhead shaking like this because we're laughing our asses off. That's what I remember about Tom and working with Tom, and the kind of person he is. And so no, he was perfectly comfortable in this suit. And I have a great picture of that scene, and I like to show people where Tom's eyes actually are. I don't want to spoil the movie for everybody, but I will. I'll tell you. If you watch the scene, Tom's eyes are actually in the neck of the monster, and there are little slits, and you can see that his eyes are there. Now it's really well concealed and well done, but if you know it's there, you could. So Pumpkinhead's head actually sat on top of Tom's head, right?
Okay.
So he's manipulating it like this, and then the mouth and everything is robotically controlled like an animatronic. So
Gotcha.
his head's in the neck, his feet are at the knees. Yeah. But I remember I'll never forget shooting that scene. And we had so much fun on that movie. And as bad as my memory is, I remember every moment of making that movie. Every moment, from my dressing room to the makeup lady who was wonderful, putting dirt all over me every day, this is
Yeah.
called Fuller, right? That shit got in my pores, man. I mean, you just couldn't get it out. Because it was really a wonderful experience. It's my first feature film. And it took a long time before anything really lived up to that.
Yeah.
It's your first, and it was
Yeah.
just magic. I mean, the actors were great. Everybody got along. Stan didn't get along very well with the executives. I do remember that, and I think that's why he didn't continue to direct. He said at one point, not to me, but I heard that he said that directing gave him a spastic colon,
Oh, yeah.
and that he and I think that's why he didn't direct a lot. I think he did maybe one more movie after that. I always thought it was Monster Squad, but it wasn't. He didn't direct Monster Squad. But I think he did one
He
more.
was the creature effects guy on Monster Squad, I
That's right.
believe. Yeah.
Excuse me, Justin.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, but it's too bad because he was a great director. I mean, he was an actor's director.
Mm,
But the job of a director is so much more than working with the actors. It's the whole story, it's the picture, it's the tone. The director of photography's job is to take that director's vision and bring it to life. So the color palettes, everything, that's Boyan Bazelli, the director of photography, but he's working towards Stan's vision.
right.
So I think if you look at that movie, you can absolutely say Stan Winston was an incredible director on every single level. And I always thought it was too bad that he didn't continue directing, but he kind of went back into his lane and just did the amazing,
Yeah,
incredible creature.
where he's probably the best that ever lived.
Very, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
definitely someone that people look up to for their standard of work for sure.
right. Well, Brian, I'm not going to keep you all evening. Just to wind down with these last couple here. This is another question I like to ask everyone. Have you ever had an experience that you would consider supernatural or paranormal?
Yeah, man. And I can't talk about it because I'm not going to have that spirit come back into this house.
Hey,
But I basically, when I was producing House Hunters for HGTV, we had to scout houses. Yeah, yeah. Well, we scouted this house that was like, okay, I can't talk too much about it, but there was a spirit there
okay.
for sure, and it followed me out of the house. I had a brand new Mercedes Benz, right? I went out of that. I saw it. I knew it was there. And I actually told the other producer, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta walk out of here. I had to walk through the house by myself to video it, to scout it. And when I got upstairs, I felt it. And I went out to start my car and go home, and it wouldn't start. Wouldn't
Shit.
start. No explanation. They had to come tow it, take it to the dealership. Turned out to be some weird, like random thing with the key or something. But it just, and then all these other things kind of started happening. And eventually it left me alone. But yeah, I've had a lot of experiences like that. I know now you're like,
I
oh,
do not want to
shit,
get you in
you're
trouble.
batshit crazy.
I know I don't want to get you. I don't want it at my house either. So let's not talk about
I hear you, brother.
it.
Nah, I believe in good energy. And I know this, what I know. And I know this from being able to spend time with my great aunt when I moved back to the South, which, I moved back and I got to be with her at the end of her life. That changed my life completely. I know that there's more to this world than we see. And I know
Right.
that there's more to our existence than just this moment on Earth. What it is, couldn't tell you, but I know
Agreed.
it's there. You know what I'm saying? I know
All
it's
right.
there.
Well, I don't want to get you in trouble, Brian, so we'll move on from that.
Thank you. Next question.
Yeah. Best acting advice you've received and who gave it to you?
Oh yeah, that's easy. And because it didn't happen until later in my acting career, I had moved back to Atlanta and I was taking a class with Steve Coulter. And if you look up Steve Coulter, he is in he had great success starting at like age 60. He was a working actor his whole career. And then at 60, he got cast in The Conjuring, Conjuring 2, Annabelle. I mean, you name it. Walking Dead, series regular in Walking Dead. But he's my friend and mentor and friend more than anything now. But he was my acting teacher, and I just moved back here from LA, and I go to the acting class and I haven't learned my lines, and I show up to do the scene with my partner, and I'm just like faking my way through it. And he put me in the corner and he said, "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but if you're not going to prepare, don't come. Don't waste my time." And I was like, "Do you know who I am? Ah, how dare you? I'm an LA actor. How dare you?" Well, what he was teaching me was the importance of doing the work and the importance of preparation. That was life changing for me. That was just something no one ever taught me, or that I just never understood the value of. And that's everything. That's the only way you have success is by doing the work,
Mm, right.
preparing, showing up prepared. And he taught me something called the 10 times read, where you take your scene and you just read it 10 times. You don't act it at all. You just read it for the words, every single word in the script, every stage direction, every other actor's lines. You read it 10 times without even thinking about acting, so that just becomes written on your heart and you know that scene inside and out. Mickey Rooney kind of did the same thing. He just happened to have a photographic memory. So he could literally look at it and know it.
Right.
Knowing that material so well that then the organic things can start happening, because you're not thinking, what's my next line, what am I doing, where do I look now? You're in that moment completely because you've prepared. So it was Steve Coulter, one of the best actors and unsung heroes of character acting. You'll know him if you look him up. You definitely, he was in he's her boss in She-Hulk, attorney at law. He's the head lawyer who's her boss. You'll recognize his face. And he's a dear friend, so I hate to say he's a role model, but seeing how he just persistently kept at it and just worked and
Mm,
worked and worked, and then he started getting these breaks that put him in a different sphere, income wise and everything. I mean, it was just life changing because again, he never went home. But he was absolutely the teacher that gave me my life changing advice. Just do the work. You don't just show up and try to look a certain way and think you can just like fake your way through this. There are people out there doing the work, and that's who you're competing with. And I wish I'd had a teacher like him in my early days in LA. I think it would have done even more than I was able to like miraculously somehow do. Because I always think I just got really lucky.
To
Um,
piggyback off that, one of my favorite quotes is, "Well, luck is when preparation meets opportunity,"
Absolutely.
and I live by that.
That's it. That's it. And here's the thing too, Justin. Opportunity is always going to be there. And if one
Hmm.
opportunity doesn't pan through, there will be another one. We get this idea in our heads when we're young, especially that like, oh, every chance is your last chance. I can tell you sitting on this side of 50, that's not true. Opportunity comes as long as you put yourself out there for it to come. And knowing how to do the work, knowing why you're doing the work, preparing to do the work, and then walking through every one of those doors that opens without fear or with your fear in check, which is what the preparation does. You know,
Right.
we'll always have our insecurities. Actors will always have that insecurity, but what keeps them, like I said in the beginning of the interview, from ruling us is preparation, knowing that you're prepared, you're going to show up and you're going to do your thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, to put a nice bow on the interview here,
Merry Christmas.
what's on the horizon for you? Can you share anything without getting in trouble or breaking any
Yeah, no,
NDAs?
yes. Yeah, I've got voice acting. I've got 15 auditions to do in the morning, and I will do them so that they're all sent out to the agents on time. I'm going to do more convention appearances next year. Not a whole lot, but I'm trying to get out there and meet the fans. I love meeting the fans. I'm busy, so I don't have time to do them every weekend like my good. I mean, well, listen, my one of my dear. Anyway, yes, my dear, someone who's become a really dear friend of mine is Felissa Rose, and she's a champion for me, and I'm a big champion for her, and I love her so much. I could not do what she's doing. I don't know where she gets the energy. I swear to God, it's supernatural. I've actually seen her walk into a room and lift the entire room with her
Mm.
energy. It's totally a supernatural gift. She's like an angel. But I will be doing some appearances next year at some of the different horror cons. I'm going to. There are two films on the horizon. They both look like they're going to go, but nothing is set in stone yet. But if they both go, one is the one that's very emotional, and the other one I'll be speaking. I'll be doing the entire part in French.
Wow.
Speaking French. Yeah, I got to go to Montreal for a convention and met a fantastic filmmaker. I saw her work and it's just stunning. It's unbelievable. It's horror in the horror genre. She's winning awards all over the world and she has a role that she wants me to do and she wants me to speak French for the entire movie. So that will be a challenge.
Do you speak
So
any French at
I
all?
do.
Okay, I was like, okay, that shouldn't
And
be. I hope you
unfortunately,
do.
yeah, I do. And I got pretty good over that weekend in Montreal. I'm really rusty because I don't have any friends that speak it anymore. So, but if I'm around it, I can get kind of back up to speed. But she wants me to do this entire role in French, so we'll see. So that's exciting. And then my voice work continues. So I'm just hustling, auditioning, and getting out there working. I have a
Awesome.
couple of friends who've written scripts that I'm in a fortunate position. I'm hoping I can get these movies made for my friends. That would be wonderful. We're this close to putting pen to paper on a couple of deals. One's a horror, one's a comedy. But these are writers I've known for a long time, and I'm in a position now where I can connect them with the money people, and it looks like some of those deals are going to happen. So yeah, I just keep
Awesome.
keep moving forward, man.
Well,
You know,
Brian, I appreciate you, man. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Big fan
you
of your
too,
work.
Justin.